I've been married to my wife, Amy, for 5 years now. We met in our late 20s, and I was immediately drawn to her intelligence, wit, and compassion. We moved fast, but it felt right. We shared similar values, wanted the same things out of life, and I truly believed she was my soulmate. The first few years of our marriage were great, at least that's how I saw it. We traveled, worked on our careers, and talked about starting a family. Amy has always been a bit of a mystery, never one to wear her heart on her sleeve, but I respected that. I thought we were building something solid, something that would last. But things started to shift about a year ago. Amy became distant, and I could tell something was wrong. I asked her about it a few times, but she always brushed it off as stress from work or just needing some space. I didn't push because I trusted her. I figured she'd open up when she was ready. Then, about 2 months ago, she dropped a bombshell. We were sitting on the couch after dinner, and out of nowhere, she told me she needed to talk. I could tell from her tone that this wasn't going to be a casual conversation. She looked more serious than I'd ever seen her. She confessed that she's been in love with her ex, Michael, for years. Michael was her college boyfriend, someone she dated on and off for nearly a decade before they finally called it quits. I knew about him, of course, but she'd always downplayed their relationship, saying it was just a chapter in her past. But as it turns out, that chapter wasn't as closed as I thought. Amy told me that she's never stopped loving him and that those feelings have only gotten stronger over time. She said that marrying me was an attempt to move on, to build a life with someone who was good for her. And while she does love me, she's never been able to let go of Michael. Hearing her say that was like getting punched in the gut. I felt like my world was crumbling around me. How could she marry me if she was in love with someone else? How could she let me believe that our life together was real when, deep down, she was holding on to this other person? What hurt even more was what she said next. Amy doesn't want to leave. She says she needs time to figure out her feelings, to decide if she can ever really move on from Michael. She wants to stay married while she sorts this out, and she asked me to be patient, to give her space and time. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to tell her that she's being selfish, that she's stringing me along while she pines for someone else. But another part of me, the part that still loves her, wanted to do whatever I could to help her through this. I don't want to lose her, but I don't know if I can handle being the backup plan while she figures out if she wants to be with me or someone else. Since that conversation, things have been tense, to say the least. We still live together, but it feels like there's a wall between us. We sleep in the same bed, but there's no intimacy, no connection. It's like we're roommates instead of partners. I keep trying to talk to her, to understand where she's at, but she's closed off, saying she needs more time. I'm at a loss. On one hand, I want to support her, to be the loving, understanding spouse who gives her the space she needs. But on the other hand, I feel like I'm betraying myself by staying in this marriage. How can I be okay with being second best? How can I sit by and wait while she decides if I'm good enough? Eve talked to a few close friends about this, and their reactions have been mixed. Some think I should leave, that I deserve better than being someone's second choice. Others think I should give her the time she's asking for, that maybe she just needs to work through these unresolved feelings to move forward with me. But I don't know what to think. Am I wrong for wanting her to leave? For thinking that she should go figure this out on her own, away from me, instead of dragging me through the mud with her? I know relationships are complicated, and I don't expect things to always be perfect, but this feels like too much. I love Amy, I really do. But I'm not sure I can keep doing this. I'm not sure I can keep pretending like everything's okay while she's in love with someone else. So here I am, turning to strangers on the internet for advice. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Am I being unreasonable for wanting her to leave? Or is this something I should try to work through with her? Any advice would be greatly appreciated because right now I feel completely lost. In the days following my post, I've been overwhelmed by the responses, the outpouring of support, and the advice from people who've been through similar situations. I've spent countless hours reading through the comments, and each one has given me something to think about. I guess I didn't realize just how much I needed to talk about this, how much I needed to know I wasn't alone in feeling the way I do. But as I tried to digest it all, Amy came home one night with a look on her face that I hadn't seen in a long time. It was like she had come to some sort of decision. I felt my heart drop into my stomach as she sat down across from me. I braced myself for whatever was coming next, afraid that it might be the end of us, but also half hoping it was. The uncertainty has been killing me. She took a deep breath and said, "We need to talk." My mind raced, thinking about all the possible directions this conversation could go. Was she finally going to leave? Was she going to tell me that she'd made her choice, and that it wasn't me? I could barely breathe as I waited for her to continue. "I've been thinking a lot about what I told you," she started, her voice shaking slightly. "About Michael, about us. And I realize now that I've been incredibly unfair to you. I've been selfish, trying to keep you in my life while I sort out my feelings. But the truth is, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep putting you through this." For a moment, I didn't know if I should feel relief or sadness. I could tell this was leading up to something big, but I wasn't sure what. Amy continued, her eyes filled with a mixture of regret and pain. "I'm going to leave. I'm going to stay with a friend for a while, and I'm going to figure out what I really want, without dragging you through it. You deserve better than this, better than what I've been giving you. And I can't ask you to wait for me while I try to figure out my own mess." Hearing her say those words out loud was like having the air sucked out of the room. It was what I had thought I wanted, but now that it was happening, I wasn't sure anymore. The idea of her leaving, of being truly alone, terrified me. But at the same time, I knew deep down that this was probably for the best. "I don't know if we'll find our way back to each other," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "But I need to do this, and I need you to take care of yourself too. I'm so sorry for everything I've put you through." I didn't know what to say. I could feel the weight of our marriage, of all the years we'd spent together, pressing down on me. But in that moment, I also felt a strange sense of clarity. Maybe this was what needed to happen for both of us. "I'm not going to lie," I finally said, my voice trembling. "This hurts like hell. But I think you're right. We both need space to figure out what we want. I'm sad that it had to come to this." Emily nodded, wiping away a tear. "So am I. But maybe it's the only way we can find some peace." She packed a few things that night and left to stay with her friend. Watching her walk out the door was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The house feels empty without her, and I keep expecting her to walk back in any minute. But I know she won't, at least not for a while. It's been a few weeks now, and I've been trying to adjust to this new reality. I've been going to therapy, trying to make sense of everything, and slowly, I'm starting to see things more clearly. I've realized that I need to stop blaming myself for what's happened. Amy's feelings for Michael weren't something I could control, and while it hurts, I know that staying in a marriage where I'm not the first choice would have only damaged me further. I'm not sure what the future holds for us. Maybe Amy will find what she's looking for and come back, or maybe we'll both realize that we're better off apart. But for now, I'm focusing on myself, on healing, and on figuring out what I want my life to look like moving forward. I've started reconnecting with old friends, picking up hobbies I'd let slip away over the years, and rediscovering who I am outside of this marriage. It's not easy. There are days when the loneliness is almost unbearable, and I wonder if I made the right decision in letting her go. But deep down, I know this is a journey I need to take. One thing I've learned through all of this is that it's okay to put yourself first sometimes. It's okay to walk away from something that's hurting you, even if it's the hardest thing you've ever done. I'm still hurting, still processing everything, but I'm starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm moving in the right direction. It's been about 3 months since Amy left, and in that time, I've gone through a whirlwind of emotions. At first, it felt like I was in a fog, just going through the motions of everyday life while trying to cope with the sudden emptiness. But as time passed, the initial shock began to wear off, and I started to settle into this new normal. I won't lie, there have been nights when I've just sat in the quiet of our home, wondering how everything went so wrong. The memories of our life together are everywhere, from the photos on the walls to the little things like her favorite mug in the kitchen cabinet. I've thought about putting those things away, But somehow, I can't bring myself to do it. Maybe it's because part of me is still holding on to the hope that she might come back. But even as I hold on to that hope, I've also come to realize that I can't wait forever. Life doesn't stop just because you're heartbroken, and I know I need to keep moving forward, even if it's just one small step at a time. Therapy has been a lifeline for me. My therapist has helped me unpack a lot of the pain and confusion I've been carrying, and she's encouraged me to focus on rebuilding my sense of self. I've been learning to set boundaries, to recognize when I'm putting someone else's needs ahead of my own, and to be okay with the fact that it's okay to prioritize my own happiness. One of the biggest changes I've made is re-engaging with things that make me happy. I'd forgotten how much I loved painting until I found my old art supplies buried in a closet. It's been therapeutic, getting lost in the colors and brushstrokes, creating something just for the sake of creating. It's a small thing, but it's helped me reconnect with a part of myself that I've neglected for too long. I've also started to rebuild my social life. I've become so wrapped up in my marriage that I didn't realize how isolated I'd become. Reaching out to friends, even just for a cup of coffee or a walk in the park, has reminded me that I'm not alone in this. My friends have been incredible. Some of them knew things were off with Amy long before I did, but they never pushed. Now they're just there, offering support without judgment, and it's made all the difference. As for Amy, we've had limited contact since she left. She's been staying with a mutual friend, and from what I've heard, she's still trying to figure things out. She hasn't reached out to me directly, and I haven't felt the need to chase after her. I've realized that if she wants to talk, she knows where to find me, but I'm not going to put my life on hold waiting for her decision. I'd be lying if I said I didn't still think about her all the time. I wonder if she's any closer to finding the clarity she was looking for, if she's still thinking about Michael, or if she's started to regret leaving. But I also know that I can't control her journey. I can only control mine. Recently, I've started to consider the possibility that maybe this separation is exactly what I needed too. It's forced me to take a hard look at my own life, at what I want and what I deserve. I've always been the type to put others first, sometimes to my own detriment. But this experience has taught me that it's okay to ask for more, to expect more, and to not settle for anything less than a relationship where I'm truly valued and loved. A couple of weeks ago, I got a message from an old friend who lives in another city. She's recently gone through a divorce and suggested that I visit her for a weekend getaway. I was hesitant at first, worried about leaving home and facing my feelings head-on. But after some thought, I decided to go. That weekend turned out to be exactly what I needed. We spent our days exploring the city, trying new restaurants, and just talking, really talking about life, love, and everything in between. It was refreshing to be in a new environment, away from the constant reminders of my past. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope, like maybe there's a future for me that doesn't involve waiting around for someone else to decide my worth. I came back from that trip feeling lighter, more at peace with the situation. I don't know what will happen between Amy and me, but I do know that I'm done sitting on the sidelines of my own life. I deserve to be happy, and I deserve to be with someone who chooses me without hesitation. So, where does that leave me now? I'm still taking it day by day, focusing on healing and finding my own path forward. I've started thinking about the possibility of dating again, though I know I'm not quite ready yet. But just the fact that I'm open to the idea is progress, and that's something I'm proud of Amy, and I still haven't had that final conversation about what our future holds. And I know it's something we'll need to address sooner or later. But for now, I'm okay with the uncertainty. I'm okay with not knowing how this chapter will end because I'm starting to realize that the most important thing is how I'm writing the next one. If Amy comes back and we decide to give our marriage another try, it will be with a clear understanding of what we both need and expect. And if we decide to go our separate ways, I'll know that I did everything I could, and I'll be at peace with that. But no matter what happens, I'm committed to living my life on my own terms from now on. I'm rediscovering who I am, what I love, and what I want, and that's something no one can take away from me. It's been another couple of months since my last update, and life has taken some unexpected turns, some good, some challenging, but all of them necessary. I've continued to focus on myself, on healing, and on figuring out what kind of life I want to build moving forward. And while I'm still navigating through some rough waters, I'm beginning to see a clearer path ahead. A few weeks ago, Amy reached out to me. It was an email, short and to the point. She asked if we could meet up to talk, saying that she felt ready to have an honest conversation about everything. My heart raced when I saw her name in my inbox, a mix of anxiety and curiosity bubbling up inside me. I knew this conversation was inevitable, but it didn't make it any easier to face. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe where we used to go on lazy Sunday mornings. I got there early, my stomach in knots, and ordered a coffee that I barely touched. When Amy walked in, I could tell she was nervous too. She looked different, more tired, but also more composed, like she had been through a lot and come out the other side with some clarity. We exchanged the usual pleasantries, but it was clear that neither of us was interested in small talk. After a few awkward moments, Amy took a deep breath and dove right in. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she started, her voice steady but soft. "About us, about Michael, about everything. And I realize now that I've been holding on to something that's not real, something that's been keeping me from truly being present in our marriage." I stayed quiet, letting her speak. I needed to hear her out, to understand where she was coming from. I thought that my feelings for Michael were something I needed to resolve before I could fully commit to our relationship, she continued. But what I've come to understand is that those feelings were more about the past than the present. I was idealizing a time in my life that I was afraid to let go of, and in doing so, I was sabotaging what we had. She looked up at me, her eyes searching mine for some kind of reaction. "I'm not in love with him, not really. I've been holding on to a fantasy, a what if that's never going to happen. And in the process, I've been hurting you, hurting us, and I'm so sorry for that." I could feel a mix of emotions swirling inside me, relief, anger, sadness, and even a flicker of hope. But I wasn't ready to let my guard down just yet. I needed to know where she stood now, what this realization meant for us. "So, what does this mean, Amy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "What do you want now?" She paused, as if weighing her words carefully. "I want to work on us, if you're still willing. I know I've messed up, and I don't expect you to just forgive and forget everything. But I miss you, and I miss what we had. I want to try to rebuild to see if we can find our way back to each other. But I also understand if that's not something you want anymore." Her words hung in the air between us, heavy with the weight of everything we'd been through. I'd spent so long thinking about this moment, about what I would say if she ever came back. But now that it was happening, I felt overwhelmed. "I appreciate you being honest with me," I finally said, choosing my words carefully. "But a lot has happened, and I'm not the same person I was when you left. I've had to face some hard truths about myself, about what I want and what I deserve. And I'm not sure if we can just pick up where we left off." Amy nodded, her expression a mix of understanding and sadness. "I know, and I don't expect things to go back to the way they were. But I'm willing to do the work, to take things slow, if that's what you need. I don't want to lose you without trying." We talked for a long time that day, about everything we'd been through, about where we were now, and about what we wanted moving forward. By the end of it, we both agreed that if we were going to give our marriage another shot, it would have to be different this time. We need to rebuild trust, to communicate better, and to truly commit to each other in a way that we hadn't before. We decided to start with couples therapy, to have a neutral space where we could work through our issues with the help of a professional. It felt like the right step, a way to rebuild our foundation while acknowledging the damage that had been done. The first few sessions were tough. We had to confront a lot of painful truths, not just about what had happened with Michael, but about the ways we had both contributed to the breakdown of our relationship. It was exhausting and emotionally draining, but it also felt like we were finally addressing things that had been simmering under the surface for years. At the same time, I've continued to focus on my own growth. I've been careful not to lose myself in this process, to maintain the boundaries and self-respect that I've worked so hard to rebuild. I've stayed connected with friends, kept up with my hobbies, and continued therapy on my own to ensure that I'm not neglecting my own needs. Slowly, cautiously, Amy and I have started to rebuild our connection. We've had some good moments, nights where we've laughed together, where it felt like we were rediscovering what we loved about each other in the first place. But there have also been setbacks, moments of doubt, and insecurity that remind me how fragile this all still is. I don't know what the future holds for us, and I'm okay with that uncertainty. I've realized that I can't control everything, that some things have to unfold naturally. But what I do know is that I'm not going to settle for anything less than what I deserve. If we're going to make this work, it will have to be as equals, with both of us fully committed to the journey. For now, we're taking it one day at a time, trying to rebuild something new from the ashes of what was. It's not easy, and there are no guarantees. But we're both willing to try. And that's more than I could have hoped for a few months ago. It's been another 6 months since that pivotal conversation at the cafe, and I feel like I'm in a completely different place, both emotionally and mentally. So much has happened in that time, and while the journey has been far from easy, I'm beginning to feel a sense of peace that I haven't known in years. After that initial meeting, Amy and I committed to seeing our therapist weekly. We made a conscious effort to be honest and vulnerable with each other, which, as you can imagine, was incredibly challenging given everything that had transpired. But the therapy sessions provided a space for us to talk about things that we had previously avoided, resentments that had festered, fears that had gone unspoken, and the ways we had both felt unloved and unseen in our marriage. One of the most significant breakthroughs we had was realizing just how much we had let our communication deteriorate over the years. The situation with Michael, painful as it was, had been a symptom of a much deeper problem. We had stopped truly talking to each other. We had become so caught up in the routines of our lives, in the roles we played as husband and wife, that we had forgotten how to be friends, how to be partners in the true sense of the word. Rebuilding that trust has been a slow and sometimes painful process. There have been nights when we've stayed up late, hashing out old arguments that we never properly resolved, and mornings when the weight of our past mistakes has made it hard to even look at each other. But we've also had moments of genuine connection, moments where I've felt like we're starting to understand each other in a way that we hadn't before. One thing that has made a big difference is that we've started to spend more intentional time together. Instead of just coexisting in the same space, we've made it a point to go on dates again, to do things that we both enjoy and that allow us to reconnect. We've taken up hiking on the weekends, something we used to love doing when we first started dating but had gradually let slip away as life got in the way. Being out in nature, away from the distractions of daily life, has given us a chance to talk and to remember why we fell in love in the first place. We've also made changes to our daily routines that prioritize our relationship. Every night, we set aside time to check in with each other, to talk about our days, our feelings, and anything that's been on our minds. It sounds simple, but it's been incredibly grounding for both of us. It's a reminder that no matter what else is going on, we are each other's partners in this life, and that connection needs to be nurtured. That's not to say everything has been smooth sailing. We've had our share of setbacks. There have been moments when the doubts creep back in, when the old wounds feel fresh again. I'd be lying if I said there haven't been times when I've wondered if we're just delaying the inevitable. But each time those doubts arise, we talk about them openly, and I've come to realize that this kind of transparency is something we should have been practicing all along. As for Michael, he's no longer a presence in our lives. Amy made the decision to cut off contact with him completely, a decision she came to on her own, without any prompting from me. She's been open about how difficult it was to do that, but she also recognized that it was necessary for her to fully commit to our marriage. Knowing that she made that choice on her own terms has been reassuring, though I still have to work on fully trusting that chapter of our lives is closed. On a more personal note, I've continued to focus on my own growth and well-being. I've maintained my individual therapy sessions, which have been crucial in helping me navigate my emotions and stay grounded. I've also started a new fitness routine, something I'd been meaning to do for a while, but never found the time for. It's become a new way for me to channel my energy and stress, and it's given me a sense of control over my life that I desperately needed. In the midst of all this, I've also reconnected with a passion I'd long since forgotten: writing. I've started journaling again, something I used to do religiously before life got too busy. There's something therapeutic about putting my thoughts and feelings down on paper, about exploring my inner world in a way that feels safe and private. It's been a way for me to process everything that's happened, to make sense of my emotions, and to rediscover parts of myself that I'd lost along the way. Where do things stand now? We're still very much a work in progress, but I'm starting to feel hopeful in a way that I haven't felt in a long time. Amy and I have decided to renew our wedding vows next year, not as a way to erase the past, but as a way to acknowledge the journey we've been on and to commit to each other moving forward. It's a step that we both feel is important, an opportunity to start fresh, with a deeper understanding of what it means to truly love and be loved. I know that some people might think we're crazy for trying to rebuild after everything that's happened, and maybe they're right. But I also know that love is complicated, and that sometimes the hardest things are the ones most worth fighting for. We're not the same people we were when we first got married, and that's okay. We've both grown, we've both changed, and now we're trying to figure out how to grow together in this new chapter of our lives. I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. I know there are no guarantees, and I know that we still have a lot of work to do. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like we're both genuinely committed to making this work, to creating a relationship that's built on trust, respect, and real love. Thank you, everyone who's been on this journey with me, who's offered advice, support, and understanding. Your words have meant more to me than you could ever know, and I hope that sharing my story has helped others who might be going through something similar. Life is messy, love is messy, but sometimes, out of that mess, something beautiful can emerge. Another 6 months have passed since my last update, and life has continued to evolve in ways I hadn't anticipated. Looking back on the past year, I'm amazed at how much has changed, not just in my relationship with Amy, but in myself. The journey has been long, filled with ups and downs, but it's also been transformative in ways I couldn't have imagined. Amy and I are still working on our marriage, and while it hasn't been easy, we've made significant strides. Couples therapy has become less about crisis management and more about deepening our connection. We've reached a point where we're not just healing from the past, but actively building a new future together. It feels like we've turned a corner, like we're no longer just trying to survive, but actually thriving. One of the biggest changes has been in how we communicate. I used to think we were good at talking to each other, but I've realized that we were often just skimming the surface, avoiding the deeper, more uncomfortable conversations. Now, we're much more open and honest with each other. We talk about our fears, our desires, and our insecurities in a way that we never did before. It's not always easy, but it's made our relationship stronger and more authentic. We've also made a conscious effort to prioritize our marriage in ways we hadn't before. We set aside time each week for us, whether it's a date night, a weekend getaway, or just an evening at home with no distractions. We've learned to cherish these moments together, to see them as opportunities to reconnect and to remind ourselves why we chose each other in the first place. The vow renewal we planned is coming up soon, and as the date approaches, I've found myself reflecting a lot on what this ceremony means to us. It's not just about celebrating our love, but about acknowledging everything we've been through, both the good and the bad. It's a chance to start fresh, to recommit to each other with a deeper understanding of what marriage truly entails. We've decided to keep it small and intimate, just close friends and family, people who have supported us through this journey. But perhaps the most significant change has been within myself. Over the past year, I've done a lot of soul searching, a lot of hard work on understanding who I am and what I want out of life. I've learned to set boundaries, to stand up for my needs, and to not lose myself in my relationship. I've realized that I deserve to be happy, to be loved fully and unconditionally, and that it's okay to ask for that. My writing has continued to be a source of solace and self-discovery. What started as journaling has blossomed into something more creative. I've started working on a novel, something I've always wanted to do, but never found the time or courage for. It's been an incredibly rewarding experience. a way to channel my emotions and to explore different aspects of life and relationships through my characters. I don't know if it will ever be published, but that's not really the point. It's about the process, the joy of creating something that's mine. I've also deepened my friendships, leaning on the people who have been there for me through thick and thin. I've learned the value of having a support system outside of my marriage, of nurturing those relationships and allowing them to flourish. It's something I had neglected before, but now I see how important it is to have a community of people who care about me and who I can turn to when times are tough. As for Amy and me, we're in a good place. We're not perfect. No relationship is. But we're committed to each other in a way that feels more real, more grounded than ever before. We've faced our demons, and while they're still there, lurking in the background, they no longer have the same power over us. We've learned to face them together, to support each other through the hard times and to celebrate the good ones. I'm no longer waiting for the other shoe to drop, no longer holding my breath in anticipation of another crisis. Instead, I'm focused on living in the present, on appreciating the life we're building together. There's a peace that comes with that, a sense of contentment that I haven't felt in a long time. I know there will be challenges ahead. There always are, but I feel more equipped to handle them now. I'm stronger, more resilient, and more aware of what I need to do to maintain my own happiness and well-being. And I know that no matter what happens, I have the tools and the support to navigate whatever comes our way. So, as we prepare to renew our vows, I'm filled with a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the love that's endured, for the growth we both experienced, and for the future that we're creating together. It's not the fairy tale I once imagined, but it's real, and it's ours. And that's more than enough for me. As I write this next update, I'm sitting in a quiet corner of my favorite cafe, reflecting on what has been the most transformative year of my life. It's hard to believe how far we've come since that fateful day when Amy confessed her lingering feelings for Michael. What seemed like the end of our marriage turned out to be the beginning of a journey that neither of us could have anticipated. A journey that has tested us, broken us down, and ultimately reshaped us into stronger versions of ourselves. The vow renewal ceremony we had planned finally took place last month, and it was every bit as meaningful as I had hoped. We chose a small, picturesque spot by a lake, surrounded by just a handful of our closest friends and family. The weather was perfect, clear skies, a gentle breeze, and the sound of the water lapping softly against the shore. It felt symbolic, like the calm after the storm that had defined our lives for so long. Amy and I wrote our own vows, which was both challenging and cathartic. Standing in front of her, with our loved ones watching, I felt a mixture of emotions: love, hope, gratitude, and a lingering sadness for what we had lost along the way. But more than anything, I felt a deep sense of peace. Our vows weren't about promises of perfection or fairy tale endings. They were about committing to continue doing the work, to keep choosing each other every day, flaws and all. When it was my turn to speak, I looked into Amy's eyes and said, I promise to keep communicating, even when it's hard, and to always fight for us, even when it feels like the easiest thing would be to give up. I know that love is a choice, and I choose you. Today, tomorrow, and every day after. Amy's vows were equally heartfelt. She acknowledged the pain she had caused, the mistakes she had made, and she vowed to never let those mistakes define our future. She promised to be more present, more aware, and to always strive to be the partner I deserve. The ceremony wasn't just about us. It was about everyone who had supported us along the way. We made a point to thank our friends and family, to let them know how much their love and guidance had meant to us. There were tears, laughter, and a sense of unity that filled the air. It was a moment of closure, a way to say goodbye to the past and welcome the future with open arms. In the weeks since the ceremony, life has settled into a new rhythm. The intensity of the past year has given way to a quiet contentment that I hadn't felt in a long time. Amy and I have continued our couples therapy, though now it feels more like maintenance than crisis management. We're learning to navigate the everyday challenges of life with more grace and understanding. And while we still have our moments of disagreement, they're far less frequent and much less damaging than they used to be. One of the biggest lessons I've learned through all of this is the importance of self-care and independence. While Amy and I are committed to each other, we've also realized the importance of maintaining our individual identities. I've continued to pursue my passions, including my writing, which has blossomed into something that brings me immense joy. I've even started sharing my work with a few close friends, and their positive feedback has given me the confidence to consider publishing some of my stories. It's been a long time since I've felt this excited about something that's purely mine. Amy, too, has been exploring new interests and reconnecting with old friends. We've both made a conscious effort to give each other space to grow individually, and it's had a surprisingly positive impact on our relationship. We're no longer as dependent on each other for our happiness, and that has allowed us to appreciate each other in new ways. As I think about the future, I'm filled with a cautious optimism. I know that life will continue to throw challenges our way, but I also know that we're better equipped to handle them now. We've built a foundation of trust, communication, and mutual respect that feels solid, something we can rely on when things get tough. We've talked about what's next for us, whether that's expanding our family, traveling more, or simply enjoying the life we've worked so hard to rebuild. Whatever we decide, we're approaching it with a sense of partnership that feels new and exciting. It's not about escaping from the past anymore. It's about embracing the present and creating a future that's true to who we are now. As I close this chapter of our story, I want to thank everyone who has followed along, offered advice, and shared their own experiences. Your support has been invaluable, and I hope that by sharing my journey, I've been able to give something back. Life is unpredictable, and relationships are messy, but I've learned that there's beauty in the mess and strength in the struggle. Here's to the future, whatever it may hold. I'm ready for it, and I know that no matter what happens, I'm stronger, wiser, and more resilient than I ever thought possible. And that's something worth celebrating.